Welcome to Covenant Conversations. My name is Kyle Burkholder, and my guest today on the podcast is Casey Andis. Casey's our Discipleship Director, and he's bringing Habits of the Household to us. A popular book from a couple years back, and what he's going to be doing is introducing it to some, refreshing for others, and really just giving us a set of principles and highlights that we can apply right now today to grow our faithfulness in our homes. Whether you are without kids, a family that's got kids at home, or maybe even empty nesters or grandparents. There's all kinds of universally applicable principles here. Can't wait for you to hear it. Without further ado, let me get right into today's conversation. Welcome to Covenant Conversations. My name is Kyle Burkholder, and I'm so excited to be joined today by Casey Andis. Casey is our Discipleship Director here at Covenant Church, a frequent guest on this podcast, maybe one of our returning champions. We'll find out. Casey is here today to walk us through some of, maybe highlights is the wrong word, but sort of the peaks of Habits of the Household. Habits of the Household is an influential book aimed at young families, but applicable to everyone. It's really about the biblical family and the rhythms that lead to fullness and health. And so Casey has read this. He's led other men through it, other families through it. And so I said, what a perfect time in our day and age in our culture. So first, welcome, Casey. And then second, tell us more about this book, Habits of the Household, and what we're getting into today.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be back. I love talking about this stuff, and I really do love this book. It was, I think it came out a few years ago, somewhere around, 2020 or 2021. In general, or I guess the simplest way to put it is he just provides some really practical ways for us to lead our families, spiritually speaking. What's it look like to lead our families? What are some things that we can try? What are some practical steps we can take? And just provides a lot of clear ways, but also a lot of flexibility, understanding that each family situation is a little different. So here's some principles we can apply. Here's some practical things we can apply, and in the end, how can we get started? Just doing something. So
that's great. And it's not just some smart guy who came up with his own system. This is all biblically rooted, biblically based. So let me just prompt you and let you start us off by make the case for family in the Bible. Help us understand kind of how important family is and why that's such an emphasis and why we spend time, especially on being so intentional about it.
Yeah. So, one of the big things is if you go and look at scripture through the Old Testament and New Testament, God does so much through families, when you think about Genesis, like he created the institution of marriage, and then for them to be fruitful and multiply. Obviously that applies in a physical way, but there's also that applies in a spiritual way. And so this was a quote that I found really helpful. It says, the church becomes healthier when biblical family life flourishes. Family is a primary instrument in order to pass the gospel from one generation to the next. It is the first place on earth that culture is made, and it's formational of all other cultures. So in other words, like we as fathers and mothers, when we are faithful to kind of worship, to love, to enjoy and to learn and obey God as fathers and mothers, that impact goes outside of our family. It impacts the church, and as he said, it impacts the culture. And so I think for a long time, and Kyle, I know you're a little bit older than me, but we both grown up in a culture. We both grown up in a culture where physical provision from fathers is highly valued, and it should be. That is biblical. But I think to fathers, I want to encourage you that we're not just supposed to provide in a physical way, but we are supposed to lead in a spiritual way. And so Joshua 24:15, Joshua is a leader of an entire nation, yet he says, regardless of what you guys do, me and my house, we're going to worship the Lord. That's what
I love this. So moms, dads, grandma, grandpa, everybody's listening. People who don't have kids yet, you're in the best spot because you can start fresh and actually make great choices once you get there, if that's what God has for you. So Casey, these are habits, these are rhythms, these are principles that can lead to flourishing families. Go ahead and give me the first one that you kind of cherry picked out of the book.
Yeah. So, as you said, he talks about
all kinds of different habits. And so I think the two that's probably been most impactful actually in my own life after reading this book is kind of this idea of what are our habits when we wake up, and what are our habits as we, as the night winds down, what are our habits in the evening. And so with the waking up, one of the things that I think are helpful is, okay, if we're going to spiritually shepherd our family, we have to evaluate our own habits. We all have them, right? And that this is not something that's new. A lot of people have written about it. It's just a matter of fact, like a matter of whether they're intentional or not. And me and you had this discussion a couple weeks ago, really on a different topic, but something that you mentioned, I thought it's like, okay, where's the first place that you go when you get up in the morning? And so I think one of the habits that he talks about is what would it look like for you to have a short prayer the moment your feet hit the ground, and maybe that means kneeling because it allows you to stop and kind of gather your thoughts. Maybe that's as you're walking to the bathroom. Maybe that's the first place that you guys go, brushing your teeth, getting your contacts in, whatever that is. And I know something that you suggested, what it would look like to have your phone away from your room. So when you wake up and you get to the bathroom, your Bible's already open to Psalm 1 or the next day, Psalm 2. And so that doesn't take an hour of study. I know some people in this stage of life, you can do that. And then for some of us, you're like, well, my kid woke up 3 times last night. I'm dead tired. I just couldn't. Like, I literally physically can't. But starting your day off in prayer and even just reading one scripture, you'll be amazed at the difference that can have on you. So those are two big ones, I think, with the waking habit. And the only other one that I would mention is what would it look like to have a moment of gathering. Now, this is not going to apply to everyone because everyone's schedules may be different. But if you are at home, your kids are up, your wife's there, if you do have that option, I think it is a cool habit of, I'm going to gather everyone. I'm going to say a short prayer for everyone's day. And some of those blessings can be, we call them, sometimes before I would leave for the kids, I would give them a hug and say, may God's grace hug you today. You kind of make that connection with the physical, and then a gathering and sending out into their day. And that can really give your whole family a sense of purpose.
And you're saying, like, in a context specific way, as much as you have your family in one place or on some same schedule, or if they're of the age where you can do this morning thing, do it. But then even what I even hear you saying, like, is this kind of hugging blessing. There's
Right.
almost a that sounds like a blessing for a certain age child who's going to receive
Right.
that their way, and yet
Right.
for a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 20-year-old, whatever,
Yeah.
you're probably going to tell me, and I'll let you tell me, but
Yeah.
you're probably going to say it changes by context, or we update sort of the principle of, can we be waking, intentional, purposeful? Can we,
Yes.
how do we do that? Is there specifics, or it's really like, hey, your mileage may vary, but if you can take the principle and figure out how to apply it, then you're off to the right start one way or another.
Right. 100%. And so I think, so with the scripture before phone and prayer, it doesn't really matter what stage of life you're in. Those are two things that you can do for your own benefit that do affect your family. We kind of can set the temperature of how our family's days are going to go sometimes. So that's something that you can kind of do across the board. But as far as the blessing is concerned, I'll give you the extreme version of it. Sometimes especially with my boys, actually Evie likes it just as much. I might pick them up and throw them into the couch and say, may God, throw his love on you today, and I'm connecting that. I doubt you're going to throw Bella into the couch. I don't know if that would be helpful or not, but are there things or even traditions your family has that you can connect that spiritually? And so some of you, it's like, we do give each other a hug every day beforehand, or if they're not there and you kind of are all leaving the house at different times, maybe that's just a daily, for you, a daily prayer that you send. Almost everybody, I feel like, has a group family text. And so maybe it's just sending a prayer through that of, hey, I'm praying that the Lord blesses you with his grace today. It doesn't have to be crazy complicated. It can just be simple. And even if your maybe even if your family member or your child is kind of resistant to the faith at this point, I highly doubt they'll resist that or not take that as something that is loving or generous.
That's really good. And the idea that I'm pulling from this, if I'm listening along as you're talking, it sounds like you're saying if we as the head of the household, the parents in the household, the mom or the dad, as we start our day intentionally in the right order with the right things, we can then figure out ways to insert that same intentionality to our kids' days, whether it's the couch throw, whether it's the group text, whether it's writing the simple encouraging note with a Bible verse and stick it in the lunchbox. So when our kid gets to open lunch, like we've used our intentional morning to begin leading our kids into the same habits of intentionality and faith. Is that probably a good summary of that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's like we all already have certain rhythms. So some of them, we could say they might need to be changed, but some of them, it's not about changing the rhythm. It's just how can we insert some guidance or even like I said, a spiritual blessing or spiritual prayer into that rhythm that you already have, instead of trying to uproot your whole system.
Okay, so that's morning.
Yeah.
Did you say morning and evening? Have you already said this? Are you taking us somewhere now? What about my evening rhythm? If I got my morning and I start figuring that out, what's different about the evening? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think the evening, something that was really helpful for us, and so I will say this again, the guy who wrote the book, he has 4 boys. They're all pretty young age, so some of this is going to apply to especially parents with younger kids. Bedtime can be something that you dread. That whole process of getting ready for bed, I feel like is a challenge to all parents with young kids. And why this is helpful is how can you implement rhythms and habits that make that not just more or less stressful, but make that something that they actually look forward to. And so one of the examples I would say is what we started doing a few years ago is when we would put them to sleep, we would kind of do these question and answer. And that's changed over time as well. But just to give you an example, and he has this in the book, which is why it's so helpful. He's got different like formats and things you can try. And we started off with the real structural aspect of it. And then it kind of turned into our own thing. And so one of the things we asked, like, hey, do you know that we love you no matter what good or bad things you do right before they go to sleep every night? Do you know Jesus loves you the most? And so on and so on. We have a few other questions. But I think, once again, you already have the rhythm of putting them to bed. You have to, right? You're going to brush their teeth. You're going to figure out how to get them ready in a lot of different ways. So how can you implement not only a spiritual blessing for them, but for yourself? It's kind of hard it makes it harder for me to get angry or give into that anger, I should say, when I know I'm going to ask them these questions right afterwards. So it's a good check on my own heart as well.
I love that. That seems like you said, you can do that with any kid, any age, grandkids. If you got them for a weekend, there are ways to affirm, build faith, and make it a tradition. Kids love any little tradition. There's something really secure in that happening regularly. So it doesn't have to be profound. It doesn't have to be, this incredible, inspiring speech you give every night about their faith.
100%.
To your point, it's simple things can go a long way.
Right. And now, because that started becoming a rhythm, I can't get away with it. Even when I don't want to, they remind me like, hey, you didn't ask us the questions tonight, so
that's genius in building great faith habits that bless them. It actually forces you into a more habitual kind of family liturgy of its own. So that's really cool.
Right.
Okay. So you've laid out this compelling morning and evening kind of principles, ways to build in little routine there. If we ask the average parent listening, the hardest part of the day is not probably breakfast, and it's not probably bedtime, because there's 14 hours in between where they are living by instinct. They are disciplining the best they know how, day in and day out. So can you pull from the book and give us some of the sense of like, what does it look like to move sort of from instinct to intentionality when it comes to disciplining? Because there's 1,000 different voices in our culture that say, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. And maybe is there a way to zoom out and get something better?
Yeah, I think that was why one of the reasons I even chose this specific thing to pull from the book is one of the, it's probably the chapter I've read the most, because they're, all your kids are different. They have different personalities. So what worked for one didn't work for the other. And like you said, there's 1,000 things out there how to practically do it. I think why I enjoyed this book is it kind of, as you said, zooms out and helps us remember what is the purpose of discipline. What are our common instincts when things go wrong? And what are some kind of principally based habits that we can build to combat those instincts? And so one of the things he says about discipline, he's like, it's not a means of controlling their behavior for our convenience, but rather as a means of stewarding their hearts towards a loving God. And it's so easy to just want to control their behavior. That's it's so easy to try to want to control our own behavior. And so it's so easy to do that. And so some of the common instincts that we have. So he gives more than this, but I kind of pulled out 3. One, when our child misbehaves, regardless of how old they are, we can have this instinct, they're doing this on purpose, and there's a bit of a reaction is kind of like, it can be an overdeveloped view of their fallenness, right? This is purely intentional. They're trying to ruin my life. That's maybe the dramatic way, but in the moment, that's what we feel. And so our instinct is to get angry and to respond in our anger. The opposite one is, our other instinct is, there's nothing wrong. They meant the best. And our reaction can be, we never intervene at all. And that's kind of an underdeveloped view of fallenness, because we are fallen and we are broken. And sometimes we do things intentionally, and they are intentionally trying to disobey. I think the third instinct is probably the most common one. It's, I'm frustrated and exhausted. I need to assert control to get the right result as fast as possible. I think the reason that is so common is because we really are often in a hurry to get to the next thing. And I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges for all parents is, how do I slow down and discipline or have a habit that's more helpful, and not only more helpful, but more biblical and gets to the aim that we want, when I can't be late to work, otherwise I might get fired. There's real situations that you have to think about that. And so the urgency forces us to respond sometimes in ways that are not helpful for anyone. So what are the habits to combat that? And I think that the 3 habits that kind of pulled out is, one, he said, establish loving authority. We have to remember that there is a relationship, right? We are the parents, especially, before they're out of the house. There is more of an authority that we do actually have, but that is a loving authority. And so we're not just there to give them advice. We are there to try to shape and influence and mold them. And so kind of establishing that, sometimes it's through posture, sometimes it's through reminding them of that, like, hey, we are responsible for you. And so a lot of times it's just helping them understand the nature of the relationship, and reminding yourself that I'm not just there to, like I said, provide my opinion, but there is some weight to it,
right?
If that makes sense. The other is just pause, pray, and think. That doesn't have to be long, but I think that is probably one of the more practical and helpful habits, because it's just so easy to respond quickly and in our emotions. And so if you pause, if you're talking to God, once again, that makes you deal with your own emotions. And okay, let me think carefully about what the consequences should be or shouldn't be, before I just, throw out whatever I feel in the moment. And then lastly, and I think this is the most important one, is we're always looking to end in reconciliation, right? I want them to understand our relationship is reconciled, or the relationship with their brothers or sisters, or even their friends, is reconciled above almost their outward behavior. Because if we start there, the outward behavior, it will follow in the right time.
No, that's I'm kind of lost for words in the reconciliation part of just what an underdeveloped skill that is in our culture, and what a wild gift that would be to give our kids not only the ability to learn how to reconcile with others, but over time, watch that develop into a value where they long for reconciliation, and knowing that that's just a reflection of our relationship with the Lord. One thing you said was near the beginning, which I thought as you walked through those concepts, early on in this kind of parenting discipline part, you said something along the lines of sometimes we're parenting just to try to get through the day, and we're almost parenting for our comfort or ease or benefit. Like I do a thing to my kid, with my kid, for my kid, whatever, but the goal is to allow me to make my way through the day. My kids need to just get in line so I can survive and do it again. And it occurred to me that there's really two ways to look at kids, and you laid this out really subtly, but I think really brilliantly, which is one way is they're my kids and they need to get in line. And that's the point of discipline, so that my life can be idealized even with children. The other view would be that they are God's children. They're God's gift, and that my job is to steward them not for me and my comfort, but for God and his glory. And if we have that shift, that just small shift of like, this is not my kid who needs to bend around my life. This is God's kid who I've been entrusted with, and I need to use my day to build this child for his glory. That's a wildly different outcome I'm aiming for, and it probably changes everything about the way I parent.
Yes, yeah, because they're no longer getting in the way of what you want to do, or of the life that we want. It's kind of changing that dynamic, like you said, changing how we think about it. And I think I have like a resolution to try to remind me, especially we'll read it before I go home, and it's like, hey, I need to remember that my children have an audience with the God of the universe. So there's almost a certain reverence to understand what responsibility I have, and understand that they're not just there to fit around my life, but part of the gospel. And as we talked about earlier, part of the gospel, a part of the generational impact. And you can, there's historical examples of this, but the generational impact that we have on them is far beyond what we really can do in anything else.
So no, that's big. This idea that we are entrusted with, and not we are not the sole owners for our purpose and our pleasure, but we are entrusted for God's glory. Same with a spouse. I mean, while we're on it, if you have a spouse, the difference between expecting my spouse to please me and make me happy, that's not going to go well. If I expect my spouse to partner with me and we are in a journey to become holy together, that's a whole different aim, and our marriage will reflect it.
100%.
And so I think that's big as we, if parents are listening and going, what's one thing I take from that portion? I would just say, take the thing that you are entrusted with these sacred little creatures that, to your point, Casey, they have an audience with the Father. They've been created by the Father. They have a big capital P purpose upon their life. And our job is to help steward them towards that, even if it's sometimes uncomfortable or inconvenient for us.
Right. And it almost always will be.
Always will.
Whether we want it to be or not, so.
Okay. So there's obviously a ton in the book, a lot more. We could go chapter by chapter and we could do this for hours. Let's say, first, let me say this here. If someone's super into this, like, man, I need more of this. I'll say this again when we close, but let's see. We're open to doing a book study on this, to having someone gather 5, 6, 8 different folks to get together, host them at the church, buy the books, whatever we got to do. We think this is valuable. We'd love to do that for you. So if you're listening, watching, and you go, how do I get more of this? I need this in my life. Email Casey@bgcovenant.org. We can make a plan. But let's say we're ending our time today. What's one more thing you can give me? What's something I can do today? So maybe the question is, I'm a little bit inspired. I'm a parent and I want to put some of this in action. I'm a grandparent and I'm gonna go, how do I do this? What's one thing I can do? Where do I start? If we're going to start somewhere today?
I mean, the first, I guess, a general comment is do something. Just start with something. And I think that's the biggest battle. So start with something that you feel like that's actually repeatable. Okay, I can do this. we can do this. It's not asking too much. And I think even when you think about family devotions, one of the we get inspired and we get excited about it for good reasons, and then we try to do a family devotion, right? And it goes, whether it's teenagers or little ones, it's like, okay, everyone felt reluctant to be there, and it was kind of off, and then we get frustrated. Well, then they feel that, and all the more they don't want to do it. And so I would say do something, but also do something with patience, understanding like it's going to take a little bit. When we first started those questions and answers, like, do you know that we love you no matter what good or bad things? You just kind of looked at us like, what's happening right now? And, fast forward a couple years later, then they're asking for it. And so it takes time. So do something. It doesn't have to be extensive. It doesn't have to be a long Bible study. And so some of the things I would suggest to younger families is there's this, God's Biggest Story Bible. There's short lessons. The illustrations are awesome. You can read it in 5 minutes, pray, and that's it, and they're going to be distracted, and they're going to, have, make comments you don't want them to make, or not really pay attention. And I think, you can call them back to attention, but without just being frustrated. That's a good place to start. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think really what you should ask is, okay, did I read to them? Did we pray together? And another one, did we play together? And I think even if that was your 3 things that you kind of checked off at the end of the day, you're getting somewhere, and then that momentum will kind of build on itself.
It sounds like you're saying, when you say do something, something's better than nothing, do something, start small. Maybe the right parallel equivalent is if I'm woefully out of shape, and I start a juice cleanse and 4 hours a day of weight training, odds of me keeping that up are pretty low.
Right.
Whereas if I go, well, today I'm going to take a walk around the block, and then tomorrow I'm going to take a walk around the block, but maybe go an extra block. Or once a week, I'm going to do this hard workout with a trainer, and I'm going to slowly build on that till I can grow the strength. And so maybe that's what I'm hearing you say. There's a way for folks to get overwhelmed easily, bite off more than they can chew. There's also a really smart way to go. If you're not doing anything, do something. And even if it's Saturday morning over waffles, we're going to start a Saturday morning thing, and then watch as that slowly becomes a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday thing.
Right.
But be successful with the little thing.
Yeah.
And then slowly you can grow that into a more thing, both so it's sustainable for you as a parent or grandparent, but also so that your kids have time.
Yeah.
New habits, there's all the books, New Habits take 21 days or 7 million hours.
Right.
New habits always take so much time to get instituted and really nailed in our lives. And so part of the go slow, just do something maybe is let those habits slowly take root.
Right.
And I bet what we find out is our families are looking for more from us as they get used to the new habits because they're so life-giving.
Right. Yeah. And I will say this, one other thing, I guess, as far as the last thing is, especially if you're, you at the very least, maybe read the book or start something with another family. So like, even when I read through it, I remember one of the things I was like, man, I need to make a commitment on how I respond in discipline, because I could feel my anger was not where I wanted it to be, And so I remember texting another dad and saying, hey, we've talked about this before. Let's make this specific commitment this week. And then you have some accountability there. And so, there are a lot of community groups with a lot of families in them. And so, inviting them into that, especially if they're in the similar age group as your kids, being like, hey, this is something that we want to do. We actually have one community group right now that they're starting this devotional process in their group time, and it's only set aside for the first 10 minutes of the group. So it's not a high bar, but they're doing something to try to build in that rhythm for the kids can expect it. And it's also good for us.
So you're saying don't do this alone. I mean, better to do it alone than not do it at all. Right. But if you actually want to succeed, join your household to another. Yeah. Iron sharpens iron. Find someone who can be an audience to your accountability, and vice versa. And if someone doesn't have that group or doesn't know where to start, they go, well, that would be great and all, but we just moved here, or we don't have a lot of friends, or we're too busy for friends or groups because of the age of our kids.
Yeah.
What should they do? What are they? How do they find you, and what do they ask you for?
Yeah, I mean, I think this, what you said earlier, email me, at casey@bgcovenant.org. So email me if you, I mean, I'm obviously, I know a lot of you know me. So if you see me, on Sunday, pull me aside and be like, hey, I'd like to get in a group, or groups are in a good spot right now. A lot of groups are ready to receive people. And so we can definitely get you connected in that way. And, that would be doing something. That'd be a good first step.
I think if anybody hears anything, start doing something. You can make progress. Don't allow the whisper of the enemy to tell you you're already defeated, or because you didn't do it last week, you can't do it next week. Casey, this is super rich and really helpful, so encouraging to whether it's a single person looking to build better habits in their life and just starting with the word, or a family looking to get more into the devotional space and train up their kids. This is super helpful. And we're so appreciative of not only this time and these kind of conversations we have in public, but the behind the scenes work you do, discipling and leading us in how we become disciples is so impressive and just such a gift to us. So that's my way of publicly saying that. I hope anybody listening finds you and says the same thing, because it's a big gift to us. I'm so grateful for you. For everybody listening, we're grateful for you too. We're glad you're here, and we are so excited for what comes next. Casey and I have more planned in the weeks and months to come in conversation and just in discipleship. So we hope that you'll be on board for that. And with that said, we look forward to seeing you and hearing you on our next Covenant Conversation. Covenant Conversations is produced by Jake Trethaway and Robert McMahon. It's recorded at Covenant Church in the beautiful frozen swamp of Bowling Green, Ohio. For more information, visit bgcovenant.org.